Alright guys, so this is going to be your clipping mask, and you will need two files for this video. You will need the zebra stripe and the close-up of Anna's eye. This can be downloaded off your assignment sheet for this week. So I'm going to open both of those up. Alright, so I have Anna's eye right here. And then right here I have zebra stripe. So what we're going to do, or the goal behind what we're doing right now, I'm going to move me down here in the corner, or I don't need it over there, so that's where I'm going to go. All right, so what we actually need to do here is we're going to take this zebra pattern and cover up the iris, or the colored part of her eye. And what we're going to do first is we're going to make a selection on her eye, and we're going to put that selection onto its own layer, since that's the only thing we're editing in this video. So what I'm going to do is, while my background layer is active, I'm going to get my quick selection tool. I can either click right here with quick selection, or I can press W on my keyboard. And then I am going to make the size of my cursor a little bit bigger. Alright, so I'm going to go through here. I'm going to select her iris. Now, I do want you to try to get a really good selection, so we are going to zoom in. I'm going to press Z on my keyboard to activate my zoom tool, W to get back my quick selection tool, and then I'm going to go back in here. Now, when I zoom in on her iris, you see that it did a pretty decent job all the way around, but I don't need the black part of her eye because I need the black part of her eye to stay that color. So I'm going to select that with my minus. I click on the options bar and select your minus one. You may need to go in here and make your brush a little bit smaller, your tip a little bit smaller, so that you can make it nice and smooth. All right, so that's pretty good. All right, the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come over here where it's a little rigidy, and I left some of the blue parts of her eye out, and I'm gonna change the size of my thing pretty small, and I'm gonna get my plus on my option bar. I'm gonna come back over here, and I'm just gonna do just a little bit, just so I make sure I have all of her eye. Now you see I went too far right there, so I'm gonna have to go back and minus it out. The biggest thing with Photoshop is whenever you're making these selections, you just need to be really, really careful. Make sure what you're getting before you go is what you want. So getting a good selection, sometimes you may over select, and that's fine because you can always go back in, just like I'm doing, and undo part of your selection. So I'm just gonna, all right, so that's okay. Go back in right here. We're gonna make that a little bit bigger. Okay, so this is our selection. Now what I want to happen is I want to have the blue part of the eye go on to its own, sorry, my ring light's a little crazy. I want the blue part of the eyeball to go onto its own layer over here so that we can add a clipping mask to just that part. So while this is selected and you see your dancing little ants, you're going to push Command J on your keyboard. What Command J does is it duplicates your selection into its own layer. So if I go over here into my layers panel, I can turn off my background layer visibility. You'll see that I just have that blue layer, or the layer for her eye. So I'm going to turn that back on, and I'm going to zoom out a little bit, not a whole lot. All right. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to go over to our zebra stripe right here. We're going to select it, and I just got my marquee selection tool right there, and that's selected. Now that I have that, I'm going to get my move tool. So I'm either going to click on move tool right here, or I'm going to click V, and I'm going to drag it over to this tab. Now I still have it active. It's still active, and I'm going to drop it. Okay. So you see I've dropped it on top. This is now a third layer right here. It's layer 2, but it is a third separate layer there. And I'm going to stretch this guy. Now, yours may look like this. So you may not have little things to stretch it. Okay. You can move it, but you can't stretch it. If you look right here on your options bar, it says Show Transform Controls. So I'm going to click Show Transform Controls, and you see that little boxes on my corners pop up. If you click on one of the corners, you'll see some different options here. One very important thing to look at is right here with width and at height. So this is at 100%, 100%. So that's like the original image, exactly the way it was. What we're going to do is we're going to grab one of those corners, and we're going to stretch it so that we make sure that there's no blue showing from behind this. Now, Obviously, we want it to kind of keep the same dimensions that it already has. So we're going to click this little link and make sure that little link is checked in like it is right now, okay? So I'm going to stretch it out here. All right, so now you'll see that's cool, whatever. If I were to go to try and do something, I get a little beep, but I can't do it. So whenever I have that, or once you do that, mine automatically did it from one of my settings. When you change stuff, sometimes you have to push this checkbox before it lets you do something. All right, so now we have our background layer. We have our eyeball, just the blue part layer, and we have our separate zebra stripe layer. A clipping mask, what it does is whenever you clip something to a layer below it, it just kind of forms to that layer. So for example, what we're going to do is we're going to change the blue part of her eye to this zebra-y situation. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to select the zebra layer, which is my top layer. I'm going to right click and I'm going to go to create clipping mask. When I create clipping mask, you see it cuts itself to match the layer up under it. And since we only had this selected on the last one, that's what it covers. All right, so that's what we're going to do. We're going to zoom out just a tad. Oopsie. All right, so when I'm looking at this, like, it's very obvious. We've talked about whenever we Photoshop, we want it to look semi-natural if possible. This isn't going to look that natural, but we're going to change the opacity of this clipping layer that we just added. So opacity is how translucent an object is, or a layer is. So with this layer selected, layer 2, which is our zebra print that we just clipped, you see the little arrow? That means it's clipped to the layer up under it. We're going to change the opacity of that one down, and let's see, you see as we go you can start to see what's behind it. I'm going to change the opacity down to about 25%. That's pretty close to what I want it to have. All right, so this is what your file should look like when you turn it in. So for assignment, I think this is 5, assignment 5, you should have a zebra eye that is, the opacity is turned down to 25%. And whenever I look over here in the layers panel, I should be able to see your background layer, layer 1, and a clipped zebra layer. And this is what you would do, take a screenshot of and turn in. And that's it.